Today's question is, I have many UDTs and it gets messy trying to find them. What's a good way to keep them organized? And I assume what we're talking about is actually more of a naming convention than trying to keep them neat and tidy. When you're defining a UDT or a user defined type, it's quite common to just name it something that is relative to what you're trying to build at the time. So looking in the project tree here, we have things like bidirectional motor with thermistor and e-stop failsafe, which doesn't really mean anything to me, but it might mean something to the person who built it. We also have things like variations of the same thing, flow, flow pulse, flow USV, and flow V. Again, they all mean something to somebody, but they don't necessarily mean anything to me as somebody looking through this project right now. So we should try to keep naming conventions to something that actually makes some sense. So this one here, G120 underscore VSD, that's a bit more acceptable. It gives us that it's a VSD, and it also tells us that the hardware is a G120. But again, I'm just knowing that because I happen to work with those equipment. So there's lots of things that we can do to try and organize things in a way that makes sense. The first thing really is the project tree. So instead of having things all loose in here, try to put things in folders. So here we have an example: control related methods and managers, instruments and devices, and system management. And the other thing is, don't use abbreviations. So MDL valve, I know that that stands for modulating valve, but someone else looking through this project might not. And STD underscore valve is standard valve. But again, it doesn't really give us great indication if we don't know this project. So going into this folder for control related methods and managers, you'll see that there's subfolders for buttons and toggles, calculations, PIDs. Let's have a look at the PIDs. In here we have types, and we have UDT underscore PID. And it's straightforward, but it's also prefixed with UDT. So when I'm trying to declare a data type in an interface, all I have to do is type UDT. For example, if I click the button here to bring up the drop-down selector, I know that if I go all the way down to U for UDT, all of my UDTs will be grouped together in alphabetical order after my UDT underscore. And whilst it seems fairly obvious that that's a good thing to do, a lot of projects won't do something like this. And it does pay dividends to be able to just quickly look something up and know that things are actually defined as a UDT. Everything that is a UDT will have UDT in front of it, which means that you're not picking up a data type that has nothing to do with being a UDT or having to check that it is a UDT. You might have also noticed that in my folders here, I have types, and again, types. So every single folder has a types folder in, and that's actually because of how I've managed my UDTs. So you'll notice here that my UDTs belong to a library, which is this little black sort of triangle in the top right corner. And if I come over into my libraries pane here and open my library, you'll see the same sort of folders here: control related methods and managers, calculations is inside one of these, calculations, and inside here you can see that I have my actual function blocks and functions, and then the types folder. But in Tier Portal, you can't put UDTs in the same area as program blocks. They reside in the project tree in their PLC data types section. Whereas in my program blocks, I have my calculations, I have IBC calculated volume, for example, and when I come into my calculations types, I have my UDT that is associated with my calculation here with a function block. So I guess that if you still don't know the software and the layout of how I've laid out my projects, you might still be like, I don't really understand how this stuff links together. But you can see the steps that I've taken to try and mirror the structure between the PLC data types and my program blocks folders, and they're all tied through the libraries here. So the answer to the original question of what's a good way to keep them organized is really the library management system here, where you can put UDTs and your function blocks together, give them a name that ties them together, and also the folder structure that is mirrored in the PLC data types and also your program blocks. And doing things like that goes a long way to making things much easier to work with.